Welcome back to Movies Recap. Master Chief Leslie W. Sunday, a U.S. Navy diver who recently won a WOL, is introduced at the beginning of the film. He has been severely beaten and is awaiting punishment. As Sunday and a few other Navy personnel watch television coverage of an ongoing salvage operation, Sunday spots a familiar face. Following some nasty racist insults from one of the other sailors, Sunday tackles the man and puts him in a choking hold. The scene then shifts to a young African-American boy named Carl Brasher watching his father Mac handle the plow on their farm around 25 years prior. Carl wants to drop out of school so that he can work and keep the farm from going bankrupt. Mac is adamant that his kid won't end up like him and forced to work on a farm, yet he lets Carl assist. Time flies so rapidly, and Carl is now an adult leaving for the Navy. As a remembrance of home, Mac gives his son a specially made portable radio. He also advises Carl to always strive to be his best, even if that means going against the rules. On the US hoist in the South Pacific, Carl ends up working in the kitchen. The so-called bright future the Navy promised him and the other black officers is a running joke between them. Their boss makes the observation that there are only 3 career options available to black males in the U.S. Navy: cook, officers, valet, or get the FCK out of the Navy. Carl and his pals then head up to the deck where the white policemen are swimming. Carl decides to jump in the water since he is hot and fatigued. Carl outswims all of the white officers who try to pursue him. Carl ends up in the brig as a result of his conduct. Carl is introduced to the ship's captain, who chooses to add the young man to the search and rescue swimmers, a team tasked with saving anyone who falls overboard on the boat after being impressed by Carl's speed. A few days later, Carl is on board writing a letter to his parents when there appears to be a crash. Their mail chopper has unintentionally crashed into the sea. Carl helps the other deckhands raise a Navy diver from the ocean floor while carrying the injured pilot. Sunday is the Master Chief. Regulations specify that Sunday must now undergo decompression since he is back on deck. A mishap with the winch breaks the diver's air hose as the following diver is lowered. Chief Sunday is ready to save his fallen friend by doing a risky bounce dive. CMDR. Hanks, one of the officers, gives Sunday the order to stay, but Sunday defies him and leaps off the ship. We learn later in the hospital that Chief Sunday did succeed in saving the other diver, but the medical staff discovers that he has suffered a major embolism in both lungs. Sunday is ineligible to dive any further due to this condition. Sunday loses it after learning this information, causing damage to some hospital equipment and attacking numerous employees. Carl is present at the subsequent disciplinary hearing, when Sunday is formally demoted to a training post and prohibited from further diving duties. Carl is impressed by Sunday's bravery and decides to join the Navy as a master diver. Carl is reporting for work at diving school, the same diving school where Sunday is the trainer. 2 years later, he is permitted in after a tense argument with Chief Sunday. While the majority of other recruits find the idea of sleeping in the same bunk as a black person repulsive, one Navy applicant named Snowhole makes an effort to get to know Carl. Carl gets severely hazed by Sunday that evening. The next morning, Chief Sunday singles out Snowhill and dismisses him from the program for failing to finish a challenging assignment. Carl is now back on his own after losing his one remaining ally. Carl does brilliantly in his training despite the tough conditions, putting together equipment and getting used to the diving gear much more successfully than many of his peers. Carl, who scored only a 37 on his first exam, is sadly lagging behind in the academic requirements. Carl will be expelled from the program if he fails once more. Carl visits a library one weekend while on leave in the hopes of finding a tutor to assist him. He meets a girl named Jo who is pursuing a career in medicine. Carl's schooling barely extends to the 7th grade. Therefore, in her opinion, he has no chance of succeeding. Carl spends the entire night reading and researching the Navy program at the library. The next morning, Jo offers to assist Carl because she is so happy with his development. The two spend a lot of evenings together and gradually start to get along. Carl will soon return to the classroom to await the outcomes of another exam. Carl is delighted to learn that his exam score of 76 has kept him in the program as the results are distributed. A training exercise that involves raising a sunken ship to the surface and fixing its hull takes place the following day. The ship suddenly changes course, trapping one diver with the air hose as the other runs for his life. Carl offers to lower a fresh line for the diver who is trapped, and after several tense seconds, Carl is successful in saving the boy's life. Unfortunately, because of the prejudiced atmosphere of the period, Carl is forgotten while the diver who escaped sooner is given a medal for his actions. On his way out of the school, the recruit thanks Carl in silence for saving him. Carl runs across a young woman who identifies herself as Gwen Sunday, the chief's wife, that evening while he is in town. Carl is brought into the same bar by Gwen where her husband and his other divers hang out. When Carl and Sunday face one another, Carl asserts his superiority over Sunday. They compete to see who can hold their breath the longest while wearing pressurized diving helmets. If Sunday prevails, Carl will depart town that evening. But if Carl triumphs, Chief Sunday will have to re-accept Snowhill into the diving program. Carl succeeds in winning. Yet his acts are once again disregarded. Carl observes Jo watching the altercation in horror as she leaves the establishment. She tells him that she's been accepted into an internship and won't be able to assist Carl any longer as he pursues her. Smitten, Carl proposes to Jo. Jo considers taking a cab away, but she decides to come back and accept. At the training school, Chief Sunday meets Captain Pappy, the eccentric senior officer. Chief Sunday reports that Carl received a final test score of 94, which means that all he needs to do to graduate is complete his last training activity. The idea of a colored diver makes Pappy very unhappy, but Sunday is hesitant to concur. Sunday challenges Carl once more. Carl responds with an insult, and Sunday breaks the radio his father gave him. Sunday notices Carl's rage at this and the radio's ASNF inscription as well as the picture of Carl's father by his bed. What did his father say to make Sunday try so hard? Sunday queries. Simply said, Carl says, be the best. Sunday acknowledges that he is, but advises that he shouldn't go to school the following day since Pappy won't let him pass. Carl is enraged. The following morning, Chief Sunday explains to the recruits the requirements of the last exercise. They must assemble a flange underwater, with the tools being provided once the parts have been located on the river bottom. There is no defined time restriction and air will be supplied to the diving suits for as long as the divers can endure the chilly water. They will get points based on how quickly they complete the task. Carl enters the exercise with a belligerent attitude and, at last, earns some respect from the other trainees. Carl is one of the first to uncover the components he needs for his project. But when he asks for the tools, the employees rip a hole in the tool bag, letting the tools fall to the riverbed. Carl hurriedly looks for all the required components. The recruits do the task gradually but steadily as time goes on. Carl stays in the water until well after midnight. The other recruits have come back to watch Carl finish after taking a shower and changing into warm clothing. Sunday is given the directive by Pappy to keep Carl submerged until he stops moving. But Sunday determines that enough time has already gone and orders that Carl be brought back up. The fact that this contravenes a specific directive from Pappy makes Sunday's co-workers nervous. The other recruits stride up, but just as they start to bring in the lines, Carl's project flange emerges, finished. Carl Brashear has passed his final and, in essence, graduated with honors from diving school after spending 9 hours and 31 minutes in the freezing water. The following day, Snowhill enters the barracks to speak with Carl as he is leaving. His return to the diving program has been requested. He adds that Sunday has been fired from his position as trainer at the institution by Pappy. Carl also discovers his father's radio, which has been completely fixed and has a "Son Never Forgets" freshly engraved on its side. Carl and his wife are in a nightclub a while later. Carl celebrates his new job offer from Brooklyn Navy Yard by ordering champagne. Carl is unsure whether he should accept the position because, as a standby diver, he won't advance in rank. Carl is suddenly ecstatic about the possibility of becoming a father after Jo admits that she is 3 months late. LT. Hanks, the person who put an end to Sunday's diving career, runs across Sunday and his wife at a New Year's Eve celebration. Despite his best attempts, Sunday can't help but attack the lieutenant. Sunday is charged with attacking a higher-ranking officer and has his rank reduced. The focus then returns to Chief Sunday as he watches a TV program outlining the ongoing salvage efforts. An American B-52 bomber had crashed in Spain earlier in the day. It dispersed its payload of 350 megaton warheads on parachutes before impact. The remaining one is at sea. The other 2 have been found. The bomb disappeared in international waters. Thus, according to maritime law, whomever recovers it first will be regarded as the real owner. In order to recover the missing nuclear weapon first, U.S. divers are competing with Russian submarines. Carl is one of many divers charged with attempting to locate the lost bomb. Carl occasionally discovers metal objects on the ocean floor, but the only thing he finds is a Coke can. A Russian submarine is discovered to be nearby at that precise moment when sonar signals in the water are picked up. Carl sees the sub and tries to swim to safety, but the sub catches his airline and drags him down the seafloor. Carl is able to make touch with the surface after a number of anxious seconds and inform them that he is unharmed. Carl discovers a massive metal object nearby as they get ready to carry him home. The majority of the silt and detritus on the ocean floor had been pushed away by the sub's movement, thereby locating the nuclear weapon for them. Carl remains on deck and observes the bomb being loaded. The ropes holding the bomb crack due to an error with the winch on deck. Carl pushes a few other deck hands back, but the wire snaps and catches his own leg. Later, Jo is by Carl's side as he awakens in a hospital. Jo explains that although the impact nearly severed Carl's leg, doctors believe he will be able to walk once more. Carl is horrified to learn that his diving career has been ended by this injury. Since losing his rank, Chief Sunday has struggled financially. He is currently undergoing alcohol detox in a rehab facility. Sunday regains his footing with the assistance of his wife. He knows Carl from reading about the accident in the news. Carl is still in the hospital and is reading a news article about amputee pilots being allowed to resume their duties that was provided to him. Talking to his superiors, they believe it is difficult for Carl to resume full diving duties in his current condition, despite his desire to do so. Carl expresses his wish to return after a prosthesis fitting and have the injured leg amputated. Joe storms out in rage at Carl's careless and ostensibly selfish behavior. Carl's leg is eventually removed. He starts the challenging process of figuring out how to move and behave with a prosthetic. When Chief Sunday arrives, he asks if he may assist Carl. Sunday strikes a bargain with Captain Hanks and starts training him once more. Before a medical hearing in Washington with the Chief of Naval Personnel, he has 4 weeks to finish training Carl. Hanks consents, but on the condition that Sunday retire immediately should Carl fail to report for duty. Carl appears before the naval personnel a month later, and they talk about his potential return. Captain Hanks has instructed Chief Sunday to wait outside the courthouse. The new diving suit, which weighs 290 pounds, has been cleared for usage, but anyone who wants to use it must be able to walk 12 steps without assistance, according to Captain Hanks. Carl offers to take the 12 steps right there, and then when he notices Joe and his kid are in the audience, suddenly, Chief Sunday enters the courtroom. Hanks asks him to go, but he is permitted to stay after presenting himself to several of the more senior judges who are aware of his past valor. Chief Sunday assists Carl in getting dressed before guiding him through the challenge. Carl gets to his feet in the new outfit and moves awkwardly forward for a short distance. Everyone anticipates that his prosthetic will fail. And as he is about to fail, Captain Hanks orders him to stand down. Carl is told to ignore Sunday's instruction because he is the officer in charge of this training session. He starts yelling commands to Carl. Carl has challenges, but he persists until he reaches the 12th stage. Carl Brasher will be reinstated to full diving duty by the Navy. Captain Hanks reveals after concluding there is nothing more that can be done to stop Carl from succeeding. Sunday marches out of the courthouse as Carl and Sunday salute one another. In 1968, Carl Brasher became the first African-American amputee to do diving duty for the Navy, and 2 years after his reinstatement, Carl was advanced to Master Chief, according to text at the end of the document. Carl worked for the Navy for an additional 9 years before finally retiring.